Shabbos Daf Lamed Tes, the Mishnah tells us that it's usher to cook an egg, even though it won't be completely cooked, by putting it by the side of a very hot pot. If one does so on Shabbos, he's over Issur D'Oraisa and he's Chai V'Chatos. Similarly, to the case of somebody that takes very old herring or tuna, and some people just eat it by rinsing it off. If he rinses it off, it's considered a Gemar Malacha. Even though it's not completely cooked, that's the way they cook it. So too with this egg, even though most people won't eat a semi-raw egg, but some people will, and therefore it's considered that you cook the egg on Shabbos and you're chayiv. Any salty food, salty fish, that you soaked it in hot water before Shabbos, you're allowed to soak it again on Shabbos because ein bishul achar bishul. You cannot cook food that's already cooked before Shabbos. And to rinse it off is also mutter. But it would be usher to soak it in hot water if you didn't do so Me'erev Shabbos, because that would be considered bishul. Mishnah says it's usher to take an egg and put it on a very hot piece of clothing, and Rabbi Yossi says it's mutter. So the Gemara qualifies this. If you cook in the sun, according to everybody, that's mutter, because that's not the derech bishul, that's not how people cook. And nobody's going to confuse this with cooking on top of a flame. If you cook it on the tolda of fire, meaning you take a hot cloth, you put it by the fire, you heat it up by the fire, and you cook on that cloth, according to everybody, that's usher m'deraisa. It's a tolda of fire. The whole machlokes is the tolda of the sun. Now, the cooking in the sun, we said, is 100% mutter. But if you take clothing and you warm it up in the sun, this is machlokes, because perhaps people get confused and say, if that piece of clothing that was warmed up in the sun, you're allowed to cook, they'll come to confuse it with clothing that was warmed up by the fire. So Chacham say, we make a gzeira. Rabbi Yossi says, there's no gzeira. Rabbi Yossi agrees that it's usher to bury food in hot sand and cook through the sand. Why is sand different? This is machlokes. According to Rabbah, Rabbi Yossi is concerned that you might come to bury it in remets, in ashes with coals. And Rabbi Yosef says we're concerned that if you bury it in sand, you might dig deeper and you're chayfer guma, you'll be digging on Shabbos, and that's Issur D'Oraisa. What's the difference between the two svaras? What if you bury it in very soft sand, like beach sand? There's no digging really, and according to the shita that it's about digging, you don't have a concern here. According to the Ran, we're not talking about sand, we're talking about something very soft like ashes. You put the egg down and it just buries itself. That's how soft it is. The Brisa says that you're allowed to boil an egg on a rooftop, because most rooftops don't have sand. That is, if it did have sand, according to Rav Yosef, it would be a problem of perhaps you're going to be digging a hole on Shabbos. The Mishnah tells us there's a story in Tveria where people took a pipe of cold water and they heated up the cold water by putting the cold water into the hot springs of Tveria. And Chacham said that's asur. L'chayra, that's a raya to Chachamim that say that a tolda of the sun. The Gemara understands that how did the hot springs become hot? Through the sun. You see that a tolda of the sun is asur. Says Rabbi Yosef, no. The water of Tveria, the hot springs of Tveria are a tolda of fire, because the water heats up by going right past the opening of Gehenna. It's a real fire, and no raya from the Mishnah. Rav Chizah says, since Chachamim said in the Mishnah that Chamei Tveria is asur, we learn from this that hatmana b'dava moisav hevel, burying food in an object that creates more heat, additional heat all the time, like the springs, the hot springs of Tveria, is asur even if you put it in there before Shabbos. Ula argues. Ula says that the hot springs of Tveria are mutter. Says Rav Nachman, what are you talking about? Even the people of Tveria broke their pipes. In other words, they took it back and they don't do so anymore. When it comes to washing yourself, bathing yourself on Shabbos, it goes like this. If you are washing your face, hands, and feet, according to Beis Hillel, you're allowed to do so even with water that was heated up. And according to Beis Shammai, if you heated up the water for food, then you're allowed to add a little bit on Yantif for washing yourself, hands, feet, and face. According to everybody, if you take a bath with the water, a real rechitza, it's asur to bathe yourself even if the water was heated up before Shabbos. The machlokes is, we have a three-way machlokes. If you're allowed to shower with water, not bathe, shower with water that was heated up before Shabbos. So we have the two extremes. You have Reb Meir that says you're not allowed to shower yourself even with cold water on Shabbos. You have Reb Shimon that says you're allowed to shower even with hot water on Shabbos. And you have Reb Yehuda that makes a compromise. He says hot water is asur, cold water is mutter, and the halacha is like Reb Yehuda. Our Mishnah must be talking about like Reb Shimon, because you can make a diuk in the Mishnah, since the Mishnah says that it's asur to use this water. It says if you heat it up on Shabbos, and it's asur to bathe yourself with this water, meaning that if the water was heated up before Shabbos, it would be mutter to use hot water on Shabbos. That could only go like Reb Shimon that says you're allowed to shower yourself with hot water that was heated up before Shabbos. The whole machlokes is water that comes, they take from the ground. But if you have the water in a vessel, according to everybody, that's asur, because people might come to say, they'll think that you heated up the water on Shabbos. The halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Typically we have a rule, the Rebbe says, anytime you have a three-way machlokes and one man da'amar is a compromise, we go like that man da'amar. However, it's possible that that rule is only in the Mishnah, and our three-way machlokes was in a brisa. Nevertheless, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, like the compromise, since we heard so specifically. The only time we don't have this rule, that if you have a three-way machlokes, you go like the compromise, is like the sugi we had earlier in our Masechta, Mikuli Matloniyos. If a person takes clothing and he declares it to be a shmata, Rebbe Kiva took the middle position. Nevertheless, the halacha is not like Rebbe Kiva, because Rebbe Kiva was the Talmud of the other two, Rebbe Yeshua and Rebbe Lazar. And later on in life, he also took it back and he admitted that the halacha is like Rebbe Yeshua. Have a wonderful day.